Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this session tonight, where we're going to be hearing from the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners and the Australian College of Rural and Remote Medicine about the transition to college-led training for GP registrars. I'm Sandy Vincent from the PHN Workforce and Education team, and I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land that we live and work on. For me, that is Jarkandjung land, and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Before I introduce our presenters tonight, can I just let you know that this session is being recorded, and the recording will be available on the PHN website under the Education Library tab in a couple of days. During the presentation, can I ask you please to mute your microphones? There will be time for questions at the end of the session where you can ask those questions directly, or you can send your questions through the chat function at any time. There is an evaluation survey for this session through Slido. I'll put that link into the chat and it will be emailed to you at the end of the session. It is now my great pleasure to introduce our speakers tonight. From the RACGP, we have Sonia Catley, who is the Workforce Planning Manager for New South Wales and ACT. Joe Sayer is the Manager, Rural Pathway and Rural Generalist Training. And from ACRRRM, we're joined by Nicole Johnson, who's the Training Network Coordinator, Trish Leonard and Aileen Ilker from Practice Support Officers, and Lulu Magella, who's the New South Wales ACT Training Team Lead. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us. And I'm going to hand over to Sonia, who is going to start.
Okay, I think I'm going to hand over to Joe to start off the presentation, but Joe and I are both with the Royal Australian College of General Practice, and we're just going to talk about what's happened with the transition and a few other things that you might be interested in hearing about. Thanks,
Absolutely. Joe. No worries. Just checking that you can see the PowerPoint, Head of Australian General Practice Training with the RACGP.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. First of all, I would like to, I'm coming from Bundjalung country in the northern New South Wales, and I'd like to thank advisors and practice managers and any PHN support staff for participating in this session. I would like to thank Sandy and the Primary Health Network for Hunter New England for arranging this event, and also ACRRRM for partnering with the RACGP. Great to see you all. So as Sandy said, my name is Jo and I'm accompanied by Sonia. We do have a regional role. However, we've been entrusted by the local program team for the Hunter New England region to actually presentation tonight. And I really think that this meeting is timely. You know, we've gone through the transition process for transition to college-led training. It's now finalised, and also the first semester of the GP training semester is now complete for 2023. And now more than ever, we need to listen to our stakeholders and collaborate with our stakeholders, and that's you all attending here tonight. So we had some questions posed before the session was presented in the session tonight, and hopefully that some of the topic areas and focus areas that we're going to cover on is actually going to address some of the questions that you asked. So I guess we want to talk about our role. Registrars, the intake and the distribution within the New South Wales region, also particular Hunter, Supervisor and the practice team, and also training site, accreditation and placement process. So the RACGP's role is to deliver and administer the GP training program, and the RACGP has standards for general practice training, and these set the benchmark and the guiding principles for some key areas: supervision and the practice environment. So making sure the practice environment is safe and supports training for our registrars. Education and training and teaching. So working through the initial selection and assessment of applicants process and accrediting training sites to deliver the teaching. And also development and implementation of our local workshops that our registrars attend. And then the final area is assessment. So assessing registrars at the different stages of training and making sure they're progressing towards exams and then fellowship. In addition to the general practice training program, the RACGP also administers the Remote Vocational Training Scheme, or RVTS. the Fellowship Support Program, or FS. We have our professional community for our RACGP fellows to administer their membership, their CPD, and offer education and resources as well. So that's covering off some of the areas that the RACGP focus on. So seeing here now is the map of Australia, which was the previous borders for the 9 regional training organisations that delivered the RACGP GP training program, or GP training program prior. And then to the right hand side of that, you've got the northeastern New South Wales greater region, which has the smaller sub-regions, and you'll notice that you've got the Hunter and New England within that region there as well. But what has transpired post-transition or prior to transition was the GP Synergy Board undertook into implementing plans to make sure that there was local continuity of the AGP to a general practice training program for registrars and supervisors. And through that through the transition phase earlier this year, we've actually been able to retain 95% of our staff locally. So that's our administrative staff that support the program, and also our medical education staff as well. They are in local rural areas. We've retained our offices, and so that's a real massive benefit, as we've retained our corporate knowledge. And also with what was the G Prime training management system has actually now been taken on as a national standard for all regions as well. So the TMS, as you know it. So I think the board really supported and really supported that continuity for all areas. So what we've got here is we've got, if we look at the map of Australia, sorry, we've got our national team. So the national management team actually do the oversight of all the overall GP training program, delivery, governance, and compliance. And then we have our regional team. So specifically for the northeastern New South Wales, we have a regional management team, sorry. We've got our operations, regional directors of training, and these regional management responsibilities provide guidance and decision making for our local teams. What new strategy has been put in place is my role and also Sonia's role as well. So regional placement and workforce distribution, so definitely managing the numbers and distribution of registrars, and then myself within the rural pathways program, engagement and creating connection and facilitating additional rural skills training posts as well. Now, what we do have is we've also got our local program team, which includes our training coordinators, medical education staff, and also heads of training. And again, they are on the ground locally in rural areas, overseeing registrar and supervisor education and training in that area. In addition to that, we have the Joint College Training Services, and that's a shared GP training, a shared service between ACRRRM and RACGP that shares GP training activities, which includes the development and delivery of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health strategic plans, cultural education, and mentorship.
Okay. Okay, so thought I might show you just an idea of the number of registrars that we're getting in on a yearly basis. So what I'm just showing there is the numbers of the 2024 first intake. We have divided the Hunter New England region into 2 sub-regions, Hunter Manning Central Coast and then the New England Northwest region. And these are the numbers that we're expecting to fill for the next term. 25 for the New England Northwest, which are all rural pathway, Hunter Manning Central Coast, 25 for the rural pathway, 26 for the general pathway. And we've created this new stream of registrars. Sorry, Joe, it's gone. Yeah. Registrars called composites. And these are general pathway registrars who commit to at least 6 months in an area of need. And for the Hunter Manning Central Coast general pathway composites, that region is New England. We also have composites, a much larger number of composites in the Nepean region and in central Sydney, And they have three choices. They can go to New England, Western New South Wales, or the Murrumbidgee. And we do find a number of them choose to do terms in the New England Northwest region. So within these regions, the registrars coming in to either the Hunter Manning or New England, in addition to what is required by the AGPT training program, we have put in place a series of training location commitments to try to encourage registrars to spend some time, maybe not all their training time, but some time within these regions, in the part of the regions that are in desperate need for registrars. And these are coloured by the teal colour on these maps. So the registrars are required to do 6 months full-time equivalent in one of those areas of need. So in New England Northwest, it's 6 months outside of Armidale and Tamworth. And you can see there's another couple of variations within the Hunter Manning. And this is because we have found that registrars, if they were given their free choice, they will tend to stick with the Armidale, Tamworth or the Newcastle regions, and they're not going to likely move out to the areas that are in greatest need. This has actually been a very successful program, especially with the composite program. We've found that there's been a number of registrars since this has been started who come out in GPT1 or GPT2 intending to do 6 months and then head back to the city or head back to Newcastle and spend 2, 3 or all of their training in that region and stay on occasionally after they've finished their commitment. So this has become a very, it's actually a program that we're now pushing forward nationally to try to get registrars into those areas that are not being filled in these intakes that you see here. So it's actually a very good program. Okay, so when registrars do come into the program, and I think this is in response, Joe, to one of the questions we had earlier, registrars who come into a program, they're coming in and they're being selected into one of these regions. And so this is different to what ACRRRM does, but we select registrars into these regions, and when they accept the program, the position in the program, they're accepting on the understanding that the expectation is that they'll have finished all their training within that region. It could be all within Hunter Manning region, or within the New England region, or within the North Coast region. There are, of course, situations that might relate into them having to transfer out of those regions, but on the whole, the expectation is that they're coming to the Hunter Manning region and they're going to do all their training there unless something unforeseen happens. Okay, thanks, Joe.
So one of the key areas that we wanted to talk about too was supervisor and the practice team. So there's a number of resources that we've got available online, and this is hopefully to support the supervisor and the practice team to support a registrar in training. So there's a list of some items there as well. We also have supervisor and practice manager PD for upskilling as well. To support the registrar coming in for a new placement during the placement process, we would recommend that the team is available, is familiar with the National Terms and Conditions for Employment of Registrars, or the NTCER, and that outlines the duties or expected duties of a registrar under employment, and including on-call and VMO requirements as well, making sure they're not onerous than anyone else within the practice. We also recommend for the registrar as well, so supporting them coming into your work environment and providing information around the office staff, patients are within the practice. And if we've got some people here on our screen tonight that are in far and rural remote areas, providing introduction to the town and what facilities are available is a great tool to support our registrars in training that are going to those rural remote areas, just so they know that there's people around to help them and support them. A couple of other questions that were posed at registration time was regarding the single employer model, and there has been a lot of talk in the community and the industry with regards to this model. New South Wales Health look to be committing to 80 places for next year, so semester 1. And for those people who are not familiar with the single employer model, it's actually a contract that is maintained by the local health districts, and registrars currently who are in a hospital setting actually maintain their entitlements through their employment with New South Wales Health. And it's then partnering with particular practices and allowing them access into the practice placement and also hospital setting during their GP training time. At the moment, the College has advised, or the RACGP has advised in multiple forums that we are supportive of the single employee model. However, we've not really received any further details since the release of the single employee model. And we really feel that, we need to make sure there's a just consultation required for every jurisdiction to make sure that there is fair distribution of placements, and also what would happen if a practice didn't participate in this model, just so that we could manage any adverse or unintended consequences. And my last message there is talk to us. So the RACGP has engaged in multiple forums, national, regional, with local stakeholders to help us determine our areas of workforce priority. So not only just looking at the data, but listening to the people on the ground, because we really appreciate hearing about the challenges that you're experiencing. We really, really want to know what's going on, because this is going to help us inform future practice accreditation, support for registrars, and talk about practices in the areas of need as well.
Okay, over the last couple of years, RSGP and GP Synergy partnered into a pilot project for the remote supervision model within 2 locations in Australia, Walgett and Norfolk Island. Following that success, we're now expanded that model to include modified versions of it to allow the practice at West Armidale to remain a functioning practice with remote supervision for registrars. As I think that's been highlighted in a couple of articles that have been released recently. So while it doesn't fall under the exact model of remote supervision, because it is only in MMM3, and remote supervision tends to be in MMM5s and above, it has allowed assisting the practice to remain open, which has actually been a good thing for the Armidale region. And finally, I just want to talk about quickly the placement process that we have for the semesters. So RACGP undertakes a free market approach to registrar placements. We are not changing that approach compared to previous years, if there's anyone from old GP Synergy or supervisors from the old program continuing. So, but we are changing it a bit this coming year in that we're incentivising certain sites that have been identified by the WPP, which is the Workforce Planning Prioritisation Group, particularly in the New England region, to incentivise registrars more stringently to get to those placements, and also the registrars. So the registrar free market model allows the registrars and the practices to have a free discussion as to whether or not a suitable placement is going to be applied. And this model is also being run off Australia-wide. In many of the other states, they worked on direct placements, and that's now been moved to this free market model that GP Synergy installed last couple of years. But within the Hunter region, we will still be undertaking direct placements for any registrars who are members of the Australian Defence Force, and I think that's quite a large number in the Newcastle region. Okay, I think that's all we've got for you today, Jo.
Yeah, so the dates and times for the actual placement process opening will be available earlier this semester, so with a few weeks into the semester. But you're looking towards, the registrar re-enrolling and advising their plans for the following semester. Then we go out to the practices to ask for their capacity for the term, and then as Sonia mentioned, it is a free market approach through the placement portal on our TMS system, which you're all familiar with. But look out for details, they'll be coming out shortly. But thank you for letting us be part of this evening and really appreciate it. Sandy will provide contact details if there's anything we can help with, especially with the local team, they can help you. But thanks for letting us be part of tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jo and Sonia, for that. I'm now going to ask Trish, I think you're going to launch the presentation for ACRRRM. We'll hold the questions till the end of the ACRRRM's presentation, and then we'll open up the floor for anybody who's got any further questions for both of our groups. Thank you so much. That looks great, Trish. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy. Thanks, Trish. And thanks, Joe. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight. My name's Nicole Johnson, and I'm the Training Network Coordinator for New South Wales and ACT with the college. I am down on the in the Illawarra region on Darawal country, and I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, as well as anyone here tonight who may identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. And as we've all seen from Joe's presentation, we're here tonight to focus on registrar training. So my team, my colleagues here with me tonight are going to provide an overview of ACRRRM training from the regional team, and we're going to look at some of the key pieces from a training post and supervisor perspective, as well as hopefully address any questions that you all might have. So I might just hand over to the team to introduce themselves and then we can kick off. So over to you, Lulu.
Thanks, Nicole. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lulu Mangele, the training team lead for the New South Wales and ACT region.
Thanks, Lulu. Aylin?
Hi, everybody. My name's Aylin Ilka. I'm based in the Riverina region on Wiradjuri country, and I'm the practice support officer for Murrumbidgee, ACT, Western New South Wales and Southeastern New South Wales regions.
Thanks, Aylin. Trish?
Hi, everyone. I'm Trish. I'm based in the Cessnock in the Hunter Valley, and I cover the rest of the state that Aylin doesn't cover. So Hunter, New England, Central Coast, southwestern Sydney, Nepean, right up through to the top end of Australia.
Perfect. Thanks so much, team. And if we could just go to the next slide, Trish, and kick us off. Perfect. So we're here to provide an overview of ACRRRM training, focusing specifically on the areas that relate to you all here with us tonight. And starting off, I'd just like to highlight that ACRRRM has 4 pathways to fellowship. So as you'll see on the screen there, we've got the Rural Generalist Training Scheme, Australian General Practice Training, Independent Pathway and Remote Vocational Training Scheme. So the top 3 are all delivered directly by the college, whereas RVTS is delivered by the Remote Vocational Training Scheme under the accreditation of the college. I think it's really important to highlight the different pathways first up, because there are a lot of questions that revolve around the pathways, and it comes into play for funding, which is relevant to you all here tonight. So as you'll see on the screen, RGTS and AGBT, sorry, Trish, yeah, thank you, are both government-funded programs, which means that the fee for training is covered by the Commonwealth, as well as the support fees that follow that. So that would be the registrar payments, the training post payments, the supervisor payments. Independent pathway, on the other hand, is self-funded, meaning that the registrar is the one to pay the training fees. And as a training post, if you have an independent pathway registrar in your practice, unfortunately, it means that placement is not eligible for training post or supervisor payments. And you might all be wondering, if you were a registrar, why you would choose the independent pathway knowing this. And it all comes down to eligibility to undertake training and actually be able to access the Commonwealth funded pathways. So in order to train with AGPT and RGTS, you must have general registration as well as be a citizen or have permanent residency. Whereas with independent pathway, it offers an alternative for doctors that might not meet that eligibility criteria. So to be eligible for IP, you might have temporary residency, and you might have general, specialist, provisional or limited registration. So independent pathway makes it a little bit more accessible for some of our overseas doctors who are really keen to achieve fellowship, but maybe not quite able to meet that eligibility to access the Commonwealth funding. I'm going to focus specifically on the top 3 pathways tonight, as they're all directly delivered by the college. We could just go to the next one, Trish. Perfect, thank you. So funding, training and expectations across the 3 pathways. So this is all in relation to the training post and what you need to know to make sure that you're able to support a registrar in your practice. So for funding, if you have a registrar who is on RGTS or AGPT, then you may be entitled to training post and supervisor payments as well as additional funding. It's just dependent on the level registrar that you have. So a more junior registrar is able to attract additional funding because they need additional supervision and teaching, and then that slowly decreases as their experience increases. So these payments are tiered to classification, and the amount varies based on the full-time equivalent working hours of your registrar. If you're an Aboriginal medical service with an AGPT registrar, then you're eligible to receive salary support payments, which are processed through Services Australia once the college confirms that placement. So these payments are also tiered by classification, and they're paid at an hourly rate based on the registrar's working hours. In regards to additional funding that's available to our supervisors and training posts, we have flexible funding that's available to training post supervisors that have AGPT registrars and also AGPT registrars. And so the flexible funds have been developed to bridge the gap for things that might not have necessarily been considered through the National Consistent Payment Framework. For example, we've had a practice who put in an application for additional funding under flexible funds for additional licensing for software systems for when you've got a registrar in your practice. So it's the not thought about things where practices may incur an additional fee, and then there's an application process to be able to apply for those funds to be reimbursed. So they're accessible on application basis and subject to college approval. When it comes to training and education, all registrars, regardless of which pathway they're on, will undertake the same assessments, receive the same training and participate in the same education, and they all have the same support avenues from the college. Equivalent to that, on the other end of the stick, they're also entitled to the same amount of supervision, teaching and support through their training post as well. And all up subjects to the same college policies. So it really is consistent across all pathways when it comes to the bones of the fellowship program. And as much as I hear the myth out there that one pathway is more flexible than the other, it's really not the case. They all receive consistent training, education and support. Thanks, Trish. You could just go to the next one.
Did it go, Nicole?
I think it's still on the same slide.
The previous one.
Oh, one too far. One back.
That's 3. That's 4.
Is it changing for you, Lulu?
We can see ACRRRM training overview right now. The slide.
Yes. Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Nicole. So I'll take you through our training fellowship program. So it's a full year. So it's 4 years full-time training program, which consists of 3 years of core generalist training. So this is a great opportunity for our registrars to develop broad generalist knowledge, skills and attributes in primary care, secondary care and emergency care in a rural and remote context, as well as fostering essential rural generalist knowledge and skills in pediatrics, obstetrics and anesthetics. So CGT placements can be completed in a GP placement, hospital, Aboriginal medical services, or speciality posts that are accredited with the college. So all training must be undertaken in an MM2 to 7 location. So with the rural and remote requirement, this particular component needs to be done between an MM4 to 7 location. So there is the ability for registered training in one placement if it supports registrars to achieve all requirements. So the ideal CGT post would be a GP placement in a MM4 to 7 location that allows its registrars to participate in an on-call roster at a local small hospital. So in addition to AST covers 1 year full-time equivalent of training. Otherwise, 24 months of doing an AST in surgery. So registrars can choose from one of 12 disciplines. So AST may be undertaken at any stage of training, providing that registrars are at least PGY3 and above. So it is expected that registrars have core generalist knowledge and skills in the discipline prior to commencing AST. So AST placements can be undertaken in GP placements, hospital, Aboriginal medical services, or speciality posts accredited by the college. So an example of an AST that's done whilst in GP, academic practice, where training will usually integrate academic practice experience and clinical practice experience with approximately 50% in each practice area. So again, these placements require pre-approval by the college. The ACRRM Fellowship Education Program also runs for 12 months and is a mandatory requirement of fellowship and usually commences in a registrar's first year of training unless they are starting with their AST term. So the program includes 4 semesters of online education, semesters A, B, C, and D. So semesters A and B are facilitated over 2 semesters and both include mandatory attendance at a 3-day virtual workshop and a 2-day state-based face-to-face workshop. So then we have the assessments, which are designed to be undertaken progressively throughout their training. So once a registrar successfully completes the training program, the attainment of ACRRM leads to a specialist registration as a general practitioner with the Medical Board of Australia. So our next slide, please, Trish. So this is the current structure of our ACRRM New South Wales and ACT regional team, which consists of the training network coordinator, who coordinates all the regional staff and activities, the regional director of training, who is generally the person who will review and provide outcomes on anything outside the standard requirement for training. Then we have our 14 medical educators. So a registrar will have a designated medical educator who will provide guidance with training plans, placements, and provide advice from a clinical perspective. Then we have our 5 training officers. Now, the training officers are the first point of contact for our registrars, providing pastoral care and to support our registrars from an administration perspective. Then we have our 2 practice support officers. They will be they're the first point of contact for our training posts. And your practice support officer will work closely with the supervisor liaison officer and the practice to ensure all parties are supported throughout the registrar's training program. Then we have our training administration support officer who provides administration and support to the team. So just want to expand more on the purpose of the role of a registrar liaison officer. So the purpose is to advocate for and represent GP registrars at the training post management level, assist with pastoral care as required, and provide input into relevant programs and communication. Now, the purpose of the supervisor liaison officer role is to be an advocate for the individual and collective needs of GP supervisors with ACRRM's training network. So to build and sustain the relationships and effectively and proactively maintaining those relationships to ensure ACRRM training networks are engaged and have a voice and their needs are understood and acted upon where possible. And as a college, we believe that communication is the key to maintaining effective relationships. So we're also happy to set up meetings if required with our supervisor liaison officer and members of the team if required. So please feel free to reach out to your local ACRRM practice support officer to arrange these meetings. So in the last year, we've grown from 3 staff members for the New South Wales and ACT region to almost 30 staff regionally. So the regional team is all underpinned by the national model, where all decisions are made from a process and policy perspective. Tisha, over to you, Trish and Alan.
Thanks, Lulu. Just to add on to what you were saying about our roles in the regional team, just a bit of an explanation about Trish and I's role as practice support officers. We work with the regional team, and we also work with various other departments within ACRRM to support training posts, including practice managers and supervisors within our regions. And we also go out to practices for on-site support and attend accreditation site visits. So we may have already met a few of you. If not, we look forward to. We work with post-accreditation placements and our training officers, and we're essentially our first point of contact for practice managers within ACRRM for anything from portal login issues to accreditation queries. Next slide, please, Trish. The first step to becoming a training post is getting accredited as a training post. And you can do this at any time before you have a registrar, but you must be accredited to have a registrar. Here's a visual of what the accreditation process looks like. I promise it's not as long as it looks. First, you'd be submitting your application. We do request some supporting documentation with that. That then goes to our post-accreditation team for review and outcome. There's also a site visit that follows with the practice manager and supervisor, and we can do these virtually or on site, and that's something that Trish and I join. We recommend allowing about 3 to 6 months from start to finish for this process, just depending on the volume of applications at any given time. And the accreditation lasts 3 years, and then this process is renewed. And we've got 2 avenues to apply for accreditation. You can apply online via the ACRRM portal, and your PSO can assist you with accessing and navigating that. And we also have a paper-based application we can send out. You can reach out to your PSO to get that ball rolling, or with any questions you have along the way. We're here to support you alongside our post-accreditation team in getting accredited. Next slide, please, Trish. There are many benefits of becoming an ACRRM accredited training post. So ACRRM accredited training posts have access to a wider pool of registrars within ACRRM training across 4 pathways, as mentioned earlier. The registrars can spend the entire duration of their GP placement at one training post. And registrars are often eager to be involved in VMO roster as part of their placement and can bring additional skills such as GP anaesthetist or GP obstetrician. And last but not least, ACRRM registrars are often looking to set up ties within the communities of their placements. All right, I'm going to hand over to Trish now, and for the next slide.
Thanks, Aileen. So how we can support our registrars in practice is making sure we have a really good orientation process by providing some software orientation, MBS item number orientations. Really important for us to remind practice managers about employment through the NTCER, and GPSA have a bunch of resources available on their website. And if practices need support with accessing that, Aileen and I are more than happy to make sure we provide you the links or pathways to those. So for your registrar within those orientations, so social things throughout your communities that you may think your registrar might be interested in, like sporting groups, having some practice dinners or lunches and inviting other allied health services or other services through in your area to those to meet with your registrar, ensuring they know the referral pathways to your tertiary hospitals, an overview of your local health services, pathology, imaging, allied health support, and anything that's within your community that you know your registrar is going to want and need to access for patient care. Be aware of the registrars mandatory education sessions, and they're available through our website. And if you need some clarification around those, Aileen and I are always happy to help you with those. But make sure you've got your appointment book set up for those, for that release for the registrar. So prior to confirming accreditation, doctors must complete the following: College Supervision Essentials online course or another supervisor training course. And they're ACRRM courses, which are a bit different to our ACGPs. Cultural awareness training is also required for ACRRM supervisors. And registrars on the training pathway with ACRRM Fellowship Program are on for any training pathway. Supervisors are supported, performance monitored, and reaccredited review is undertaken every 3 years. And supervisors must be a fellowed doctor. For the support, that's where our Supervisor Liaison Officer, Dr. James Best, comes in and will help and support them as well. So this is the requirements of an ACRRM accredited training post and supervisors. So supervision requirements for the first 2 months is 100% for on-site supervision and 80% for the remainder of the first term. And then it reduces down as the registrar progresses through. Teaching requirements are there, so 3 hours provided per week for registrars in their first primary care term. And they're really important to make sure that they get that teaching because it helps them learn within that primary care setting and become more supported. They feel more supported through that. And as that progresses through, that teaching changes down into their secondary, an hour and a half of their secondary primary care term and 45 minutes for their third primary care term. AST teaching varies depending on the discipline. For most of it, it's a minimum of 4 hours per week. And that'll hand over to you, Nicole.
Awesome. Thanks, Trish. And just on that previous slide, it's probably worth noting that that teaching is based on full-time equivalent of the registrar's working hours as well. So if they were working part-time, it would be 1.45 hours per week rather than 3, and can be a combination of formal and informal teaching. Just going to touch a little bit on remote supervision. So the college has been doing remote supervision for quite a while, but has recently updated its guidelines for the appropriate implementation and safe use of remote supervision for our registrars. So as you can see on the screen there's a number of different models available. So there's remote supervision, which is where a registrar works remotely and is supervised by a supervisor who is also remote and can be anywhere within Australia. There's blended supervision, which is where a registrar and remote supervisor work in the same location for a period of the time of the placement, but also with periods of remote supervision as well, where the supervisor is off-site. There's satellite supervision, so which is where a registrar is supervised by a remote supervisor in a nearby town, who is then also available for some face-to-face meetings and supervision and education, basically. And then we have group supervision. So this is where multiple remote supervisors support multiple trainees remotely, and they rotate their days of support. And then the last one is supervisor leave cover. So this is remote supervision, which could be used to cover planned or unplanned times when a primary supervisor is not available. So this might be applicable where there is only one supervisor in the training post, and there is a registrar who is a suitable candidate who could potentially be put forward for some off-site supervision. All of the models require a considered supervision arrangement, which is outlined through the application process, and each application is subject to college approval before it can be implemented. Within the guidelines, it's actually quite helpful. There's a table that highlights when remote supervision may be appropriate, taking into consideration things like the level of the registrar. So a brand new registrar with no GP experience would not be a suitable or safe arrangement that the college would support. However, if you have a more senior registrar who has the capability and there's a considered plan that's been put forward, this would be more likely to be a scenario that could be implemented. It's certainly a case-by-case basis though, and dependent on a number of factors. Thanks, Trish. So I'm going to touch a little bit on placement as well. ACRRM offers a blended model when it comes to registrar placements in the primary care setting. So we have a structured process that runs twice a year. This is where training posts advise both colleges of their capacity to train registrars for the upcoming term, as well as update their training post profile. So the training post profile is really important because it's what the registrar will actually see when they're considering training posts for the upcoming placement. So in your training post profile, it's important to highlight what makes your post stand out, anything additional that you offer, what kind of education program you run for your registrars. If you have a FACRM in the practice who's a supervisor, that can be a great thing to add because registrars see that and think, oh, they've been through the assessments, they're going to know what I'm up against and be able to offer that guidance and mentorship in that capacity as well. Or if you have a supervisor with additional skills such as GP, anaesthetist or obstetrician, huge selling point for our ACRRM registrars as those are core requirements throughout their training that they need to meet, but also because we have registrars who are GP anaesthetists and GP obstetricians themselves, and whilst they may have an advanced skill and be qualified, they're still a registrar and looking to develop and maintain those skills. So it's a really great idea to put everything here that you can, and it's your chance to sell it. It's also a good idea to link through to your website for your practice if you have one. That way the registrar can do further research if they want to. We all know that when we look at ads for anything, if we jump in and there's nothing there, we're quick to push it to the side. Whereas if there's something we can actually have a look at in detail and consider and compare, it's more likely that you'll get interest. So once capacity is confirmed and the training post profiles are updated, which takes place over a 3-week time period, registrars will commence applying through the ACRRM placement portal. And this setup is similar to SEEK, I guess, a little bit. The registrar logs on, they see the training post profile, they preference the post that they're interested in, and then when they're ready to, they hit apply. This then sends their CV and cover letter through to the chosen training post for them to either commence the interview process or decline the interview. And this happens on a rolling process until all of our placements are confirmed for the upcoming term. And then to the side of that, we also have an alternative, which is more of a guided process for placement. So this is where registrars are able to seek their own placement outside of the placement portal and the placement process. And this can be at any time. The registrars will need to ensure it's been discussed with their ACRRM training officer and medical educator so that we can determine suitability for their training, make sure that they're going to be able to tick off what they need to, and fulfilling those requirements, and also making sure that it's suitable for their learning. But essentially this process is more similar to the one that they'll be engaging with post-fellowship, where they research and apply outside a structured process based on their needs and interests. The process is available through this avenue. As we know, we have registrars who fall outside the term dates, whether that be for leave, contract reasons, whatever it is. We have registrars that fall outside the 6-month process. And then we also have registrars that are taking additional skills to communities, as I said, whether it be obstetrics, palcare, peds, whatever it may be. And with a lot of those skills, they need to maintain those skills. So it's really important that when they're looking at their future placement, they're matching it up in a way where not only the community is going to be optimized in the skill that they can bring, but also there's the ability for them to maintain that skill in that community and further develop it. So these placements are outside, and it's open to any of our ACRRM registrars to take on that opportunity if they'd like to. This is our key dates for the upcoming semester 1 of 2024 for placement. So I'm very happy, we're all happy for this PowerPoint to be PDF'd and shared around. You'll see there it's got it laid out from when capacity and training posts opens, when the registrar is going through the placement questionnaire and letting the college know of their intentions for the upcoming training term, whether they want to be in hospital, general practice, or whatever it might be. And then it moves into the applications and interview process. From there, we're looking at confirming those placements and making sure the appropriate paperwork is in order. So practice contracts, placement confirmation forms, and Medicare provider number forms in time for that deadline of the 24th of November this year. And if we just flick to the next slide, Trish, we've just included hyperlinks to some of the quick documents that you might need at your fingertips, but sometimes can't always find and may not have time to jump on the phone. So yeah, this is just here for everyone to access following the PowerPoint. And that's it. Thank you for indulging us all over your dinner time and letting us throw around the Brady Bunch for each of us to speak.
Thank you. That was actually absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much for that presentation. All right, so we have some time for questions from our audience. We have a raised hand. I can't actually see who that is. Are you able to unmute your microphone?
I think it's me.
There we go.
Thank you. Thanks for excellent presentation, everyone. I have questions regarding we do have a 2 part-time independent registrar that we supervise. So does it still mean that we have to get our practice to participate in regular program?
So I'm not quite understanding that question. In terms of regular program, do you mean the supervisor, the supervision and teaching?
No, I mean like your placement, yes, we don't advertise because,
Sorry, someone just muted me. So no, their placement can certainly be organised outside the placement process as long as you're an ACRRM accredited training post. Someone might have muted you too, Dr. Dinesh, if you're speaking.
I don't think so.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So does it mean that we can also participate in your formal placement as well? Or do we need the separate accreditation to get to participate in that?
As long as you're an ACRRM accredited training post, which it sounds like you are if you have independent pathway registrars at your practice, then you can certainly participate in the placement process. So you should receive communication shortly in terms of updating that capacity and your training post profile through your ACRRM logon.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from anybody?
Hi, it's Bianca from Southwest Sydney Primary Health Network. It was interesting to see that RACGP have already decided placements across the Hunter New England region. Have you decided the same for the rest of New South Wales and the Southwest Sydney, for example?
I'm not sure what you mean by we've decided on placements, because we haven't.
You said that you had decided you'd split them into areas.
Oh, that's something that has always been the case in New South Wales since about 2014.
Yeah.
The regions are the same going forward for 2024.
Okay, and then 2025 is the new.
That we're still discussing what we're going to do.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Bianca. There is actually a question in the chat. Cheryl, if you're okay, I'll read that out. Are the colleges working on a system to apply for VMO status at the local hospital at the same time as applying for provider number, etc.? Our last registrar, it took so long, she finally got VMO at our hospital 2 weeks before her term was over. That's a question from Cheryl.
I can answer it from the RACGP's perspective. Cheryl, we've been in touch with our local health districts to let them know which registrars are committing to VMO services in New South Wales. A notification went out late last week. Apologies that it did go a little bit later than usual, but we did flag which registrars have nominated to undertake VMO service with their local health district in conjunction with their GP practice. We're also getting in touch with our practices and registrars just to let them know of that situation. Unfortunately, all of our TMS information was not necessarily up to date, so we're working with local health districts to support that as well. But if there's something that I can help you with locally in this region or in New South Wales, I'm happy to do that and pass on my contact details.
Thank you, Jo. Thanks for that. I don't see any other questions. Yes?
Oh, sorry, I was just going to answer from ACRRM's perspective, but it's much the same the answer as Jo's. So the college has the process to notify the LHDs of registrars that are undertaking general practice placements with VMO attachment, as well as who the supervisor is going to be, so that they can organise those contracts.
Thank you, Nicole. Does anyone else would like to raise their hand or ask a question while we have the time? No? It looks like our presenters have done a wonderful job tonight of answering all the questions. Thank you actually for our participants who sent through those questions in advance, which was really good to share with our presenters tonight. I have put the evaluation into the chat, so I'd be grateful if you would complete that. A reminder that this is recorded, so it will be available for viewing. And thank you very much, because I will be sharing contact details for our presenters, so you will be able to make contact with them. And if you have any further questions, you can send them on as well. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for joining us for tonight. It's been a great session. Very informative. It was really lovely to actually meet all of you from RACGP and ACRRM. Nice to put faces to names. So thank you very much for taking the time. Now, sorry, I can see one hand raised. Do we have someone who still wants to ask a question? No. All right. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us for tonight, and we'll see you for one of our next sessions.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks, Andy. Night.
Thanks all. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.